Welcome to the Texas High School Football Coaches Show on Lone Star Gridiron. I'm Chris Daly, and it's my belief that the men that make up the fraternity of Texas high school football coaches are much more than a bunch of thick-necked guys with whistles. They do so much more than teach technique and the X's and O's of football. They take young boys and change them into young men of character. They get kids to believe in themselves, to trust others, and to put others ahead of themselves. Texas high school football coaches are unique in how they impact the lives of these athletes as well as the generations those kids touch. In this show, I sit down with a different Texas high school football coach each time and learn about them. Not their record, not their on-field accomplishments, but who they are and what they believe and what it means to be part of the greatest sport in the greatest state. Welcome back to the Lone Star Gridiron Texas High School Football Coaches Show, Season 4, Episode 2. I'm your host, Chris Daly. On Lone Star Gridiron, you hear us talk about the all-name team. Some of these kids that have just really cool names. Well, I tell you, if there were a coach for the all-name team, it would have to be my guest, Rusty Nail from Madisonville High School. But as you will learn, he is much more than a name. And I'll introduce you to him right after we talk to these sponsors. Hey, I want to give a big thank you to this season's title sponsor, Mecha Sportswear, where they are all about celebrating achievement. They're honored that so many high schools, colleges, and universities have chosen Mecha's products to represent their institutions. Mecha supplies you with the very best in custom letter jackets, chenille letters, patches, blankets, banners, pins, certificates, and much more to motivate and celebrate achievement in athletics, academics, or the arts. They create high-quality custom awards that will fit your budget. To see why so many great schools around Texas choose Mecha Sportswear, call Sherry Armstrong or Billy Armstrong at 210-651-6592. Mecha Sportswear, the premier suppliers of letter jackets and awards for over 40 years. This episode is also brought to you by Shrimpy's Seafood right there in Madisonville. Shrimpy's Seafood Restaurant is bringing the ocean to the country with their fresh seafood delivered weekly from the coast. Oysters, jumbo Gulf shrimp, catfish, salmon, redfish, tilapia, shrimp etouffee, and shrimp gumbo too. And don't forget to save room for their famous heavenly bread pudding. Shrimpy's is located inside of Home on the Range RV Park at 3259 Interstate 45 South in Madisonville, Texas. Their phone number is 936-348-9450. If you've got a hankering for some good seafood, head over to Shrimpy's. All right, everybody join me in welcoming Coach Rusty Nail from Madisonville to the show. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris.
Great. Well, I have to ask you, you don't happen to have a sister named Finishing Nail or a brother named Ringshank, do you?
No, sir. I have a sister named Kelly. I did try to name my first son. We were going to call him William Benton and call him Bentonell, but my wife didn't go for that. So.
Didn't go for that. Maybe an Uncle Tenpenny in there somewhere?
Yes, sir.
I love it. I love it. I tell you, that name has always stood out because it's so unique. Has that played into your career at all?
You know, it really has. I think it's not only played into my career, but I think it helped me develop my personality. When my parents did that and I was younger, you know, my mom would always tell me on the first day of school, now, if you want us to call you William, we'll call you William, because she didn't want me to get teased or whatever, but really, you know, never really did. And kind of it's been a great networking tool, you know, as far as getting to know people, because everyone remembers your name, you know, regardless of whether you did anything that caught their interest or was influential with them or not. If they meet you once, they kind of remember that. And so I think it's been a great tool for me to use throughout my career.
Nice. I love it. I love it. So as you know, on this show, we're not going to talk about your team. We're more going to focus on you, your philosophy, your beliefs, and who you are as a person. And we're going to start that off with your history. So let's jump back to your first introduction to football. What was it?
My first introduction to football was in 1989. I was a student at Sam Houston State University, and I was hired by Coach Joe Clements to coach in their junior high program. At that time, Hunstville ran a 7th grade intramural program and then traveled with their 8th grade team. And so I got involved with them in coaching the 7th grade football team while I was a college student and working with their practices and assisting in the baseball program and then scouting for them. And that was really my first introduction to football. I was going to school to be a coach, but I was interested in becoming a baseball coach because that was kind of where my interest was as an athlete.
Okay, cool. So what made that switch go off and say, yeah, I want to do this for a living?
It was Coach Clements and Coach Doug Smith and the Huntsville program at that time. You know, if you go back and you look at that, that's when his sons were coming through, Steve and Chuck, and Huntsville was one of the top programs in the state. They were vying every year with Marshall and Dallas Carter and Richland Lake Highlands and them and playing in some really big games, not only there in Huntsville, but, you know, at Kyle Field and at the old Texas Stadium, and kind of just the pageantry and everything and the excitement that was built around that is really where I kind of developed my love for high school football.
Nice. And you mentioned a couple coaches. If you could, run through some of the coaches who've been influential to you and what you picked up from them.
You know, really, obviously Joe Clements was the first because that was my first exposure to football and watching not only how he did things, but what a great offensive mind he was and how he coached quarterbacks. And really, I kind of modeled myself after his style of practice and a lot of the things that we've done throughout the years offensively by watching, you know, him. He went through his, you know, Chuck and Steve and a young man named Cody Cox, and they were a really explosive offensive team. And then obviously, you know, Chuck went on to quarterback at U of H and Brigham Young, and so some of those people had came through, and I had a little bit of exposure into those. So as far as the game, probably Joe Clements, because I've considered myself for the last 28 years, I've really been involved on the offensive side of the ball, and that's where, you know, my roots are buried in his system and his philosophy and his way of doing things. And then really probably in the coaching philosophy of how the most influence on me and how I handle kids was Jerry Malone and my time at Marlin as the offensive coordinator. Outside of one school, I've spent a majority of my career in school districts that where the economically disadvantaged percentages are pretty high, and there's a lot of poverty and some challenging issues that some schools don't face. And those 3 years there with Jerry, well, he really taught me, you know, how to love kids and how to reach those kids that a lot of times don't get reached if coaches just coach like they were coached way back in the day.
Definitely. So if you could, let's go stop by stop. Every position you've held from the first one to now.
Yeah, well, after the part-time stuff that I did at Huntsville from 89 through 91, my first job was actually here in Madisonville in 1992. Dave King hired me, and I coached in Madisonville. I was here for 5 years. Came up 7th grade and then promoted up to a freshman coach, and then was on a varsity assistant the last 3 years. And Dave and all the staff that I work with, they all pulled up roots and went back to Arkansas, and I actually went back to Huntsville after that. Coach Clements had retired, and Doug Smith became the AD and head football coach. I went back there and coached with him, and it was there I coached with a gentleman named Ricky Locke, and he was the defensive coordinator at Huntsville at the time. And after 2 seasons there, he got his first head coaching job in Runge, and he took me with him, and that's where I got my first offensive coordinator job. I went to Runge to be his offensive coordinator, and was there in 97. And then we parlayed that, had a really good season, and we went together to Elgin. And I was with him in Elgin as his offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. And from there, my wife she worked for the state when we went to Runge down south. Her job really didn't transfer, and so she had gone through the service center and got alternatively certified and became basically the special ed department at Runge High School because it was a very small school. And she had finished her master's and was interested in doing some counseling. And I went to college with a gentleman named Rick Wolf, and Rick Wolf had just gotten the West job in West Texas, up just a little north of Waco. Yep. And they had a counselor position open that my wife was interested in. And I told her, I said, well, apply for an interview, and if you get it, I said, I've known Rick. We played ball together, and I'll visit with him about something that he would have. And he actually had an offensive coordinator position open, and they interviewed my wife and hired her for the counselor. And so that was our first move to the Waco area, was the contact there in West. Mm-hmm. And we were there for 3 years, and we had my daughter, my third child, was born premature. And on September 8th, 3 days before 9/11, and my wife was down visiting her mom, taking her son to the dentist, and she had what was called placenta abruptus, and Alyssa was born early and put in the hospital. And so she was in neonatal care in Houston for several months, and that caused us to move back down to the Houston area for 1 year, and we both worked for Conroe Independent School District so we could be around and close to her doctors.
Right.
And during that year, one of my college roommates was coaching for Jerry Malone and Marlin, and I got the opportunity to go to some of their playoff games, and he had asked me to watch some things and give him some opinions on some deals, and I got to know those guys. And so once Alyssa got stable, Jerry offered me a job, and I went to Marlin in 2003 to 2005 and was the offensive coordinator there. And incredible talent, incredible run. We lost to Atlanta in the state championship game in 2003 with Jeremy Sanders and Material Richardson, Denarian Ryder. But those 3 years that was probably the point in my career where I went from a transactional coach to a transformational coach, and watching Jerry and how he handled those kids and learning really that it's so much more than the X's and O's. For many years, I chased clinics. I've driven to Florida to visit with Urban Meyer about some of the things he did at Utah when he got that job, and was really geared towards schemes and X's and O's and plays. And, it was with Jerry those 3 years in Marlin in that situation where I really learned how to love on kids and how to get the most out of kids and how to develop kids that are in difficult situations into responsible young men. So I really consider that stop in Marlin as the turning point in my career. And after those 3 years, I went to Waco Connally. I was the offensive coordinator for 1 season for Kevin Johnson. And the Mart job came open. I threw my name in the hat and interviewed over spring break and got the job. And I started on that next Monday in Mart tour. That was my athletic director head football job. I was there for 9 seasons. It was a storybook deal for me. You couldn't have asked for a better situation. Went in there, we squirreled around and won the state championship our first year with a team that they really felt like, when we went in, the word was, probably a year too late. They had graduated some talented kids, but things kind of pulled together for us, and we caught a couple of breaks that were needed. And in my 9 years there, we were fortunate enough and blessed enough to play in 4 state championship games and win 2 of them. And with that, after those 9 years, both my sons had graduated and moved on. I looked at some different opportunities and just really couldn't find out, where I wanted to go. We wanted to move our daughter to a different situation for some of the things that she was interested in that weren't offered in Mart. And so I took a semester off, and I worked for New York Life and sold insurance. And the money and everything around that in the business world was really good. It was it paid a whole lot more than teaching and coaching, but I was a lost soul sitting in that bank building. Found out, that in the business world, it's not necessarily, 7 o'clock doesn't necessarily mean 7 o'clock, and 9 o'clock doesn't mean 9 o'clock. And so after that semester, I visited, when I started here in 1992 in Madisonville, there was a gentleman named Keith Smith that was hired a year ahead of me, and he had stayed here for those entire 25 years and was now the superintendent. Wow. And their position came open, and that's kind of how I've come full circle back into Madisonville.
I love it. You call it transactional versus transformational. I've always called it winning games versus winning hearts. Talk about that, how that changes a coach.
I think it's, for me, it was the moment when the light switch went off, and not only did you see, a change in your program and the coming together, and not only did the wins and the losses start pouring in there, but you started seeing, success beyond graduation with the kids and the things that they were doing with their life. And it really changed my focus from, 17, 18 hours a day of inside zone or counter or power to 17 or 18 hours a day of what can I give this kid that he's not getting at home? What can I give this kid? What kind of support can I give? What are his needs? To develop and make him become successful. Because what I'd seen, I'd won some games prior to that, and we had some kids go off, and they were going off, and some of them got scholarships and got opportunities to go there, and then they would come home or they would blow it or they didn't handle themselves, professionally or correctly when they left. So really just kind of changed my focus on the things that we were working in and started incorporating a lot of character type stuff, character building type things, lessons, life lesson type deals. We have we have families within our coaching staff where each coach has 8 to 9 kids, and we track them. We track them, academically. We track them behaviorally, and we have devotionals and things we do during the week where we become a really tight knit group, and that's when everything else in terms of what society sees as success, all that fell in place. And while personally it's not where I consider my success has never lied in wins and losses, but in this business, if you don't win, you don't keep your job very long. But in doing things the way we've done it since 2003, really the last 15 or 16 years of my career, it's kind of just everything's just really fell in place, and the Lord's really blessed me.
I love it. So let's say somebody's talking to you who knows relatively little about high school football and Texas in particular. What's a moment or story that comes to mind where you can explain to them what you love about coaching this game?
Gosh, there's so many. I think, what I love about coaching this game really has very little to do with football. It has to do with the locker room, it has to do with the bus trips, it has to do with the relationships that you develop with the players. I think, I've been fortunate enough to coach some guys that have gone on and played at really affluent universities, played in some big programs and have even gotten, a few years in the NFL. And when they come back and they talk to these kids, and everybody will tell you that there's nothing like the high school football locker room. Even when you go to the ones that went to Texas, had some go to Missouri, Arkansas, those locker rooms just aren't the same because yes, they're your teammates when you go there, but those aren't the guys that you grew up with, that you bonded with, that you spent your entire, youth with if you didn't move in from out of town or you weren't, a migrant type student or moving around a lot, in the schools I've been at, even Madisonville, Mart, Waco Connally, these here, the majority of the kids we play with, they've gone to school here since pre-K.
Right.
And, these are their friends, these are their classmates, these are the people they've got lifelong relationships with these people. And, it's really about those relationships, when we all get back together with some of the teams that have won it there in Mart, the stories aren't necessarily about the state championship game or this play or that certain play, but more about, the experiences we had along the way.
Excellent. So let's say you're talking to somebody from a town that has an average football team and always has. How do you tell them the difference of a situation like Mart? What makes it different? How can they get that in their community? Tradition
and care. And I actually, I'm living that message right now and coming back into Madisonville because, obviously when Keith brought me back here, everyone in Madisonville, they want the success that Mart has. And what we're trying to establish here, the thing that's been missing within this program, there's been some really tremendous football players come through here, but there's not a lot of tradition within the community of, where this is important, not just winning is important, but the way we do things and being involved in this, and we're going to fully support it. And, that's the biggest difference between a place like Mart and some of the other places that I've worked at is, when Mart has a pep rally from 3K all the way up, everyone attends a pep rally, everyone in the community, everyone in the school. And the most important thing there is being a Mart Panther, and wearing a Mart Panther jersey, to where at a lot of other places I work, you'll see people with J.J. Watt jerseys and, Nick Foles jerseys and things like that. And they all want to be, the NBA basketball player, the NFL football player, to where when we were in Mart, you didn't see a lot. Everybody wanted to be a Mart Panther, and they wanted to be the next bunch that brought the next championship to their town for their town to be proud of. And, I just think tradition plays a huge role in it. And there are things here in Madisonville that have great tradition. Basketball, girls and boys basketball has had that. And I think, the key as an athletic director is to develop or to build upon the traditions that exist within all your programs and try and become that in everything that you do. And, and by doing that, then you reach way more kids than you do than if you're just, specifically about one program.
And how do you build that? How do you make that grow?
I think you build upon your successes. I think you do it with some of the things we do, in developing relationships, not just within your team, within your coaching staff, within your players, but within your community, by inviting them to the things you do. We meet on Thursdays. We bring men from the community to come and visit and talk with our kids. We invite teams back that were part of the past, maybe a 10th anniversary. So if this year's 2019, we're going to bring back on homecoming, and we're going to recognize the 2009, team and try and draw these people back in where they feel like they still have a vested interest, not only in their athletic program, but their school.
Excellent. Now I'm going to shift gears to something that is often overlooked, but to me, one of the most important aspects of it is the importance of a good coach's wife. Can you talk about that?
Oh, yes, sir. Boy, I've been blessed. I met Tanya in 1990. We were married June 27, 1992. And she's been an integral part of everything we do because she's been so understanding. And, over the last 28 years, there's a lot of times where I spent a lot more time with other people's kids than I actually had for my own. And while they were a part of it, and slept under my desk, and with our coaches, I'm it's a kid-friendly environment around here. I want them up here, and we have them around because I want them to experience what we do with other kids and to learn how to be a part of the relationships that we build around here. But Tanya was just, I'm really blessed. She's been a tremendous supporter of everything I've done. I've moved her around. Obviously, when we talked about all our stops, I changed her career. When I went to Runge with Ricky Locke, she was making more money than me. She'd get on a jet in Hunstville and fly all over the state doing curriculum presentations at various prison units for Lee College and the Wyndham School District. And, I up and moved her to Runge where there was one gas station, one store, rattlesnakes and tarantulas, and about 80 kids in the school. And she did that willingly. And, but through that, she evolved her career around, and got her master's and doctorate. She's a principal here within the school district, and she kind of became an educator because, she loved me and loved what I was doing and saw the things we did. And none of this would have happened. I would not have had the career I had without Tanya being a big part of it.
Excellent. And finally, Coach, Texas High School Coaches Association Coaches School will be coming up again this summer. Let's say you are approached by a brand new coach fresh out of college, and he just wants advice on how he can succeed. What do you tell him?
Get involved. Boy, really, especially with the Coaches Association. That I consider that one of the best associations in the country. And really, network yourself, get involved, always be eager to learn and never stop learning. I was talking with a young coach the other day, and he'd asked, he looked around different things, and, I can't seem to get this or draw this interest in this. And, it's really, these days, we're not looking for a young man that knows it all. We're looking for a young man that wants to do it all, come in and be a worker and, take some initiative and not just be what I call a lister where we have to give you a list of something to do, but just, engulf yourself in everything you do and treat everyone like you want to be treated and just, love on kids.
I love it. Coach Rusty Nail, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and sharing a little bit of your story.
Well, I appreciate you and your time and what you do for coaches and athletes around the state of Texas.
You bet. All right. Take care, Coach.
Take care, Chris.
Walker's is a small-town cafe located on the square in Madisonville, Texas. Come on in and let us serve you a 25-cent endless cup of coffee. You'll be amazed how one little place brings so many people together. Come, let us treat you like a local. Find us at 112 West Main Street in Madisonville or call us at 936-348-2672. Walker's Cafe is great food and service, traditional home-style cooking, and good prices.
All right, I want to thank Coach Rusty Nail once again. I also want to thank each of the sponsors from today's show: Mecha Sportswear, Shrimpy Seafood, Walker's Cafe. These folks are the ones who make this show possible, so please go out there, show some support to them, and we'll see you next week.
LoneStarGridiron.com. Access the complete history of Texas high school football, over 100 years of information, win-loss records, coaching histories, individual stats, records, and more. Lone Star Gridiron, the authority on Texas high school football.